This is 5:21 where I am. And as always, let's begin with the chart. This is the post that inspired this episode, but it's something that has been building up. So let's go to the chart. We have, well, it is still a moon day, although it's becoming a Mars day Jupiter hour, and this is not exactly the hour because I don't have the Time Nomad app. Um, Ascendant just crossed my Chiron, ruled by Mercury. Mercury is in the 12th house, the house of exile, jail, channeling from other worlds, which I guess is more to this episode. The midheaven is ruled by Saturn, and we have a midheaven in the ninth with Saturn in the 10th, 6 degrees Saturn. Um, Kind of sextiling this Jupiter Rahu. Jupiter is still with Rahu, so we're in the thrones of Jupiter Rahu. Still, great conjunction. Um, and it's becoming a Mars day. So Mars is in the third house in Leo, opposing a lot of fortune. The IC is on Lilith, 15 degrees. And let's go to the topic of this episode. So I do want to show you the discussion that inspired it. It's by Twitter, and I'm like not exposing people that I didn't. Uh, well, okay. There was a discussion on Twitter on whether we are our charts or not. The old fate and fortune, the nature question that still pertains. And my response here is the understanding or the value in seeing ourselves not as a result of our charts, but as a result of our choices and action, um, stems from certain historical context. And like you can see in my comment, um, I previously did an episode which I think did not air in my cosmology series, which was about scientific materialism. I channeled the concept of scientific materialism, and the results were a feeling of being grounded in the body. Now, there's something you need to know. Um, when there is overflowing emotions, flashbacks from traumas, really intense psychic life, then one of the things that assist us is by focusing on the material aspect, okay, the matter aspect of things. Okay? What is the texture? And we are in, with Taurus, Jupiter, then of course, in Mercury in Taurus, so the nervous system being centered by sensations, uh, sensuality, okay? Or sensuality is sensational. And so the temperature, the number of the leaves, computing things, focusing on observing what is without the other facets of that. Okay, so grounding, what is? I'm looking at a window, I'm looking at a hat. Okay, if you see a person trying to communicate, whether it's a police person, whether it's a psychologist, trying to communicate with a person who is going through a non-volitional, non-dual experience or dissociation, then they ask the person, what do you see in front of you? Count three things that you see in front of you. Okay, this is dogmatic materialism. This is scientific materialism. And this scientific materialism got a boost after the two world wars. Okay? Also, if you talk about the Pluto Leo generation, it's a generation that was born in the aftermath of the Hiroshima and the Nagasaki. That began the transition that would put an end to an overall world war. In 2023, we know that concentration camps existed in the United States just as they existed in Germany, only Germany documented things while the United States didn't really, or not to that extent. Um, it took 50 years for the veterans of the atomic bomb, okay, the people who dropped the atomic bomb, to speak up, okay, and that's an entire Chiron return, 50 years. So they could not even speak amongst themselves. When you think about how vital speaking, validation, witnessing is to healing from trauma, okay, any sort of trauma, and you understand that silencing people for 50 years, what are the implications of them not even being able to speak amongst each other, not being able to expose, receive validation, spread the word, and heal? So, when you think about astrology, okay, and I have the honor to personally know astrologers from that Pluto generation, they're emphasizing agency. So, other than the merit of Pluto being in the domain of the Sun, which is Leo, and the Sun being the center of the galaxy, when in your Sun, in our Sun, wherever your Sun is, you're building your kingdom. And Sun does mature at 50, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? Um, then, of course, it's agency, right? But from the more mundane level, okay, what did we have? We had two world wars. Well, people were beginning to take ownership of their choices. Think about the term illegal order. Okay, an illegal order is basically whether you're a public administrator, an army person, a militant person, security person, a person who works for the public, or a citizen. Okay, for example, civil disobedience is a form of the obligation to disobey illegal orders. Okay, that's another way to look at civil disobedience, which is a tactic um, that is not so accessible. Okay, people like to give for civil disobedience, and I tackle this first before I go to my next point. You soon see why. People like to give the example of um, Rosa Parks. Okay, Rosa Parks was a case of civil disobedience. She sat in the bus where she was not supposed to sit according to the laws or the rules of her society. Okay, a black woman. But there were many women that did the same thing. We heard about Rosa Parks because she came from a well off family that could afford protecting her, okay, when she was litigated. So we so disobeying, and this leads me to the next point, disobeying illegal order is a privilege of the few, but an obligation of the masses. Okay? And think about the importance of disobeying illegal order when the order is to shoot people dead for no reason, to bring people to concentration camps, to kill them with gas, to employ people in labors that do not only not contribute to their health but directly kill them. Okay, um, to and that was done not only in Germany. Okay, that was done everywhere, and it's done still everywhere across the globes. Your most developed countries have labor conditions that are more similar in their effect to concentration and working camps than to make a life while making a living. And I'm saying that as a holistic health practitioner who sees people, who deals with people, when I get down to the essence, okay, of things, a lot of this essence is resources, emotional, physical, spiritual, and so on and so forth. Okay? How to make a life while making a living. make a life where it's making babies, okay, make a life where it's vacay, make a life where it's creative projects, where it's something that you do, that you get up in the morning, like I get up in the morning at 5:32 a.m., okay, risking waking up my parents to do this, okay, and that's labor. That is labor, okay. So the Pluto Leo generation at the aftermath of two world wars understood that agency is so needed. The taking ownership of our choices to the best of our abilities is so important. What did you do today so that children won't end up in child labor, human traffic, sex traffic, victims of pedophilia? What did you, Sam, do today? What did you, Lizzie, do today? Okay. And ask this question every day. This is the reality of the aftermath of two world wars. What did you do today so that the people of your nations and other nations won't end up with in piles of shoes and teeth as a museum? What did you, Henry, do today? What did you, Mary, do today? Okay. Those are the type of mundane questions that the person that survived one or two world wars asks themselves, that the person that was born to this person that survived, maybe being an atomic veteran, asks themselves. Another thing you need to understand is there's this. Okay, I'm gonna put it this way. Let's look at the chart. And I like to give concrete examples, so I'm gonna look at my chart. A little bit of a login in. And thanks again to astrosig.com. Peter, I don't know, with mailbox laters. I'm not going to open my mailbox here for the privacy of people who may have sent me anything. So this is my birth chart. Okay, May 6th, 1984. So this is my, oh, it gave me already with the transits. I want to, okay. So you can see the ninth house. Okay, I have ascendant Pisces. That would make my fifth house Cancer. And we don't see the inconjunct, the separating inconjunct from Uranus, which took me a while to understand. It's very important to understanding my chart. And the fifth from the fifth, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, sorry, this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, is the ninth. And the ninth, okay, is the fifth from the fifth. The fifth is your first child, it's your children. Okay, the fifth from the fifth is your children's children. So this means that in my grandmother, I and my siblings appear in the ninth house. This is, my children's children will have something to do with this Pluto, Saturn, Mars retrograde in Scorpio. And I want to tell you a concrete story about how this works. Okay? My grandmama, and from a mama side, is what I know, um, was working in a chocolate factory. She was a chocolatier, and she was working on her feet many, many years. Okay, famous factory. So working class. And then she worked for a textile factory, not the atomic thingy, genuine Tegotex, okay? So it's bathing suits and stuff. And then she died eventually of diabetes, where first they amputated her feet. Okay, and she survived way beyond her years with the great care of my mama. And when I began to work, I worked for McDonald's, a fast food, again, working class fast food restaurant, in the kitchen. I was working in the kitchen mostly because I had problems with those computations and I would get mixed with the change. So they would put me in the kitchen and I loved it. Um, and then I couldn't stand on my feet. I couldn't work on my feet. Then I worked for a credit card company. I couldn't speak. Came my throat. And so and so and so until I got eventually to a mental crisis. I thought my life is ending and I was trying to find the best way to do it. So I was working for a high-tech company and I asked them for the insurance, for the life insurance. Does it cover for suicide? And I was supposed to work there for 6 months, outdo myself so that at least my parent will have my life insurance and a good, salary if I'm not be able to continue to pursue life. That didn't work out well. Instead, I got mental care, which was not care at all, but I did get money to study. Um, and, you know, the rest is history. So the fact that I couldn't stand on my feet right in my first job, okay, pretty much my first job that was long term, was entailing standing on my feet for long hours. I could do it for a while. I worked there for 4.5 years, but then I couldn't stand on my feet. There's nothing I could do. Then I couldn't speak. There's nothing I could do. Then I had problems with those competitions. Nothing I could do. Okay, I was forced to do the make a life while making a living or die. Simply put. And when I understood that my challenges with labor have to do with me pursuing the path of passion. And my mama told me, okay, I was not ostracized by the family. Okay, my mama told me, like, you're working in jobs that don't fit your talent. You're a writer, you're a creator, you're a public speaker, you're a talented person, you can paint, you can create, you can this. And then we had this insecurity about how to make money from these things. So I was very scared and I thought, well, I want to enjoy being creative. So it's okay for me to work for a job that is just a job but leaves me time to create. That was not borne out. I was forced into making a life while making a living, a path I'm still living in today and exploring today. Okay, with the fears that that entails. And that continuation of this third generation is very important to understand. We want to understand the worldviews of our generation. Okay, think about your grandparents. Think about your grandparents. Okay. Another thing, my grandfather, from my mama's side, he he looked Irish, and so he was in the working camps, and he would escape the camp, bring food, and go back to the camp. Okay? And because he looked Irish, he could get away with this. Okay, he was from Ukraine, Sarny next to Kiev. And because he escaped through Italy, not through Germany, then he did not get shilumim, which is the money that Germany paid for Israel following the Holocaust. Also, he got something very, very tiny from Sarny, but that's it. Because they were kind. It was a foundation. They didn't owe anything to Jews. It's like it was raided. So when I think about my dealing with my health situation, I don't look like a person who has any ailment, mental or physical. Okay? Even my problems with my feet, it's almost invisible. Unless you know something about the feet, and even then, depending on how you were taught, which I think that my teachings on Hellas Vagus in a holistic level are groundbreaking, and innovative because I never ran into a person that teaches it like that. Mostly what you would get is like, oh, people tend to blame the world for their blah blah. No, people went through complex PTSD for the environment. Think about the toes being in a place that is crunched up and they have nothing that they can do about it. This was the life experience of these people. Okay? So when they start pointing their toes, they're aligning the world around them. That's not something that I've seen any holistic health practitioner said. So it's innovative even amongst holistic health practitioners. And so I don't look like somebody who has a problem. I cross as a person who's totally normal. So I could get funding for my studies, okay? So I could be a TA, okay? So I could be a person who had the education, the exposure, so I could get into certain buildings and see certain people because I come across as a certain person, the doors open up for. Okay? What do I do with that is bring food to my people. Okay, first of all, I grow food, but also spread awareness. Okay, for example, non-dual, non-volitional, non-dual experiences. Okay? There are people. Your psychiatrist is probably going for leisure time to the next tantra class that teaches them how to have energy intercourse with their partner, volitionally, of course, and willingly, consensually. Okay? But if you say, "Oh, my psychologist did that and that," you're diagnosed as psychotic. Well, all that happened was non volitional, non dual experience. For example, if you cannot talk about what happened to you because you're afraid to die, okay? When my psychologist literally said to me, "You are not safe in this room, you are not safe anywhere outside now. You must choose your world very carefully." Well, I choose. And although it does move. And then we said regarding psychiatry, they don't know what's energy. Well, I'm going to do your Copernicus. But then, this privilege that I have, I use here this privilege of being seen and not being seen, I use in favor of my people. My grandfather brought food to his people he went out of the concentration camp and back in volitionally to bring food. That was the person that my grandfather was. Like only now when I tell it, I realize it. And I remember he prayed. Yeah, look at it, it's not the night house. I remember he prayed Psalm every day after being a Holocaust survivor. And I said even the times where I was atheist, I said, well, I I can't blame my being atheist on any world war, on any Holocaust, because my grandfather who survived the Holocaust, he would read Psalm every day, every morning. Okay? So you can see how our grandchildren are continuation of the grandparents. And therefore, the Pluto Leo generation has grandchildren today that are continuation of certain worldviews. And as we look at astrology, we cannot ignore not only the transits. Okay, yes, Pluto in the sign of the sun sees the power in you. The power is in you. You are the power. Okay? Pluto in the light of the sun, you are the power. It's not you have the power. You are the power. Of course, these people are going to see astrology as you are you. Even the planets don't have power over you. Okay? What people do we know are probably Pluto Leo. I think Mark Bayersky's Pluto Leo, his mantra is no one has the power over you. most important facet of it's the face of a generation. And of course, we had psychological astrology, the rise of solar astrology, and so on and so forth. And then we have also the notion of, hey, there's life. Life happens. And here we get, I'm a Pluto Scorpio. If you can see Pluto 0 degree Scorpio retrograde, okay, going through my Pluto square. So very beginner, novice, innocent Pluto Scorpio generation. Yeah, and this is why people who are younger than me may sometimes have insights that are very relevant to me, that they have at a very young age because they're Pluto in 20 degrees or Pluto in 15 degrees. And I learn from these people. Um, that's vital to me because I'm 0 degrees. I'm standing at the doorway looking in, saying, "Oh, that looks interesting." Okay? But these people have already crossed a mile or several miles delving into the Scorpio domain. They have more insight that I have natally. Okay? So because they're going from there. So you think about the wisdom of a child. And the potency of being a child, of looking at things in new eyes, time and time, with retrograde time and time and time and time and time again, is maintaining preservation of innocence in the face of life. So that's a part of a life path. Um, and when I'm looking at astrology, if you've been watching my videos, you know that I'm a Me Too veteran. And the story I like to tell, I tell it over and over again about the time where I was Me Too veteran. And this is an experience shared by the people that were Me Too veterans at the time. None of us wanted to file a lawsuit, to get into this, to even talk about this, to expose this. I came from trying to heal myself, and I understood that I must speak. And for some reason, I felt the need to speak publicly. I couldn't just write it to. Even when I try to say write into my notebook or to my dear diary, I feel this contraction is like, boom, it needs to burst out in the open. Of course, because it was related to outer planet. And you can see natally, I have Mercury, 26 degrees Aries it's my Atma Mashu, so I don't know, um, opposing, applying to oppose this Pluto. Okay? So Mercury, my speech, my thinking, my creative skills, in this case, second house, opposing an outer planet. Which outer planet? The most outer planety of outer planets, Pluto. Okay? Except for Neptune. So it's delving into the depths of deep and speaking about this, in that case, on social media. So I wrote a satire. First, I wrote about it publicly. Then I wrote a satire. As I was silenced, and I began writing a satire. And I discovered that my case was closed as a sexual harassment against me. It was my colleague that sued the University of Haifa and won. That said that. You see, one in the sense that you could say her name, and in the verdict, they tried to play big time because they gave her compensation. Then, because she wanted to expose her name, they would demanded the compensation back. So the verdict that she can talk about is the verdict when they can say, "Oh, we ask for Maya feels to." She's public about it. Return the 130,000 shekels that were paid to her by University of Haifa, blah blah blah. Okay, so if somebody said that University of Haifa needs to pay 130,000 shekels, it cannot be that they just made a mistake and she needs to return it back. Okay, the only difference between this verdict and the previous verdict was that she could say the University is Haifa. Okay? It's every university, but the thing is that she didn't want to file a lawsuit. She was convinced to, and I can't tell the whole story for her safety. And eventually, when she met my satire, she was like, "Okay, I'm suing the institution." And I was like, wait, how did you learn that from me? I was trying to explain why you cannot sue anybody because you can't trust the juristic system, because this is the system, because our judges were trained in the academia that is like the patriarchal blah blah blah. It is not fit for a democratic regime because our politicians were trained. And you saw it, like, but she said, well, I feel more whole when I'm doing that. So I said, okay, if that's how you feel, and you won. So it took 8 years, okay, a Venus star from that. And the understanding that what was Me Too about? It was about agency, right? Okay. My body, my rights, the extension of that. Okay, if I come to make a job, then I come to make a job, not a blow job, a job. Ah, and if I say no to human trafficking or to sugaring or whatnot within work, ah, you try to attack me, you get alcohol in your face time and 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 time again. Anyway, that was the Me Too. But how did we come to enforce that? So how do we enforce that? Shirley, so how does it get alcohol in the face time and time and time again? Well, eventually what we had is this sense of I'm only at peace when I'm doing the right thing. My body is only at peace. What I want? Autonomy over my body. Okay, what do I do when I get that? I surrender into something that's way greater than me. And this is where volition and choice and nature nurture, they receive a completely different perspective. What do I want? Autonomy over my body. How do I achieve it? Releasing autonomy over my body and allowing the solutions to come in so that my body is a vessel that acts the revolution in real life. That was what we did. This sentence is saying, I feel more whole now that I made the decision to sue the institution, even though it was very difficult. It's very difficult. Okay? It's isolation that you cannot even begin to imagine. And certain things is almost like the atomic veterans. Even now, when she can say her name, which she fought 8 years for, so they will try to frame it so that she will fight for saying her name and not for fighting the human trafficking that goes in the academia. Because the Me Too was not sexual harassment. Okay? It was sexual harassment after you said no to human trafficking. And so it was sanctioned. Sexual harassment was sanctioned. You were sanctioned for saying no to human trafficking within academia. How is academia funded? By donors, yes, but also by public investment. Okay? This is your 401k. You won't be accepted to Princeton and to Ivy League and to whatnot if you're not the type of student that they think will donate upon graduation. Okay? So if you're an international student, these students genuinely do not expect to donate money to the university that they took a debt to study in upon graduation, and so it's less acceptance of international students. Okay, because the university will accept you if they think you will donate money. So who can donate money to the university? Okay, think about the wealth that you need to take. How much does it cost? It costs, I think, at least 20,000 grand to study in academic year. I don't know what it's like today. For some universities, 100 grand per year, only for a first degree. Who studies a first degree? What can you do with first degree? It's just a Sato, just a Sato. So you study second degree, you study PhD, because who's going to listen to you if you don't have a PhD? What's your PH? Right? Who cares about you if you don't have a sense of authority in your field? How do you establish authority if you want to be a business person? People listen to authority. How do you establish authority? Well, I went to so and so. That's why rich people go to Ivy League. Okay? Because you got a PH after your name. Yeah, well, I went to so and so. And what do? You donate to the university because they won't accept you to begin with. As you think about the generational wealth, and you need at least, you know, $1 million to get you through freshman to PhD graduation. So aside of talent and dedication and bribing whoever you need to bribe to get the title, it's called a PhD. But for some people it is, investing and so it's like there are true researchers out there. They usually are human trafficked, but they exist. You need at least $1 million. And that's not going to cover your whole expenses. And then you're expected to donate upon graduation. You're expected to donate upon the first degree, the second degree, and the third degree. Okay, because otherwise you won't be accepted. Why do you think you have like I don't know how many thousands applying for Howard, but only 300 being accepted? Okay. Who can be accepted? Is it financial to give you a degree? Okay, show money. This money, where's it being channeled? If you ain't got the money, if you're BPOC, if you're neurodivergent, if you say no to being human trafficked, you ain't got the money to sue. Okay? Nobody will hear about your Me Too case. Just the fact that this possibility exists within an algorithm, okay? Just the fact that this possibility exists is beyond a red flag. And so exposing that is non-volitional. Who would be the crazy person who would volitionally say, I went through so and so, look, this is what's going on? Nobody in their right mind would do that unless our life depended on that, unless we started to develop so intense medical conditions where we don't speak, then we're going to speak. Okay? And this is the most authentic piece I can deliver. I'm not an inspiration to you. If you are of the people who are agents of these changes, revolution, or whatnot, probably you're born within eclipses. Probably it has something to do with outer planets to inner planets. Probably it has something to do with Rahu and Ketu. Okay? It's bigger than you. And so the funny thing is that what we bring is autonomy over the body. How we do it? Surrendering to the great vast. Okay? And that gives a whole other perception of astrology. And this is more like the astrology of, well, you do have choice, but there's great amount of faith coming through. Because unlike, well, what do you do against two world wars? You choose who you are. But what do you do against the child being trafficked when you are the child? You got to understand that you're not to blame for it. There's no reason that that happened to you. You did not choose this in any way, shape, or form. God is not punishing you, nor is he bestowing you upon some whatnot. This fuckery just happened. Now the question is, where are the points of interference in this chaotic system? And how can we interfere so that your life is better from now on? Okay. Completely different view of not necessarily completely, okay, depending on where were you in the two world wars. But you can understand how this mundane reality integrates the views of the dissonant, and it has to hold the dissonant of volition and non-volition in order to exert will. We understand it like this. Some people are like, how can it be? Look, we understand. We understand that the things necessary to exert will are both randomness and points of interference that are agency. Okay, how do you move your hand? You have to have a deterministic set to your nervous system that when your brain or your consciousness says, I'm going to move my hand, or you're going to move my, you just move your hand. Okay? If you say, I move my hand, and there's no deterministic mechanism that exerts this will, you can move your hand, you cannot move your hand, you cannot. Okay, what happens when you give a person beta blocker? The two types of beta blockers, typical and atypical. Okay, the old group runs havoc around it makes you fat, it makes you this, it makes you that. The new group, it does something, it's the same thing, it's still a beta blocker, it still kills you, but, and the way it kills you is basically by shutting down your alert system of the body. Okay, it's given to people who have non-volitional, non-dual experience, what people call psychosis. There's no such thing as psychosis, and I'm speaking with as a person who has spoken with many people who had psychosis, supposedly, and there always was a pattern between their life experience and the so-called voices, visions, sensations that they were experiencing. And there is open dialogue approach that is now speaking that up and talking about how people deal with that is by making the alternations to their lives so that the voices become benevolent and so that they set the boundaries even with the voices or the experiences and whatnot. They basically ward themselves of psychic attack as well as make the necessary changes in their life to remain in the body. C'est tout. It's the way you deal with any ailment, not just mental ailment. Okay, there's no such, not mental ailment. It's just a condition that kind of, when you go off track, then you see kind of weird experiences. When the world goes off track and you're in it, okay, that's what happens. And there's a point of interference, the things that you can do. Okay, it might be a different thing for every person. Some people envision blue light, some people count the leaves, some people speak up, many things. So that's given to those conditions. That's also given to people who have heart issues so that the body won't get the heart attack. It doesn't seem like an irrational thing, except that if you are genuinely in danger, you do need a contraction to warn your body that something is going on, and this is how you get help. Okay, how do you save a person from a heart attack? By them having a heart attack, then they get the attention and they're being brought to hospital, then they're being treated. If you didn't get a heart attack, they die. And that's why people die from these pills. There were many class lawsuits, all won, but and still people give beta blockers to like it's still being done. And another case that's been given is when people go to chemotherapy, then you have the vomiting, okay, and because it's intense, then they give beta blockers and still olanzapine. Okay, olanzapine is Zyprexa. So many class suits against this company, and they keep coming up with the same pill in different. It's not even different generic names, and they look for people every once in a while. They look for people for experiment, and don't do anything different. Okay, you don't do anything here. It still kills people. It still causes people constipation, weight gain, tiredness. That's the least of it. But it literally kills people, and it's still being given, and that's somehow ethical. Okay? And the thing with this nausea is they try to stop the contractions when you vomit, so they give you olanzapine so that you won't vomit. Okay, but you also won't poop, and you also will have sugar drops, and you also may die. So, and sugar drops is not something that can be diagnosed by the ER. Usually, they're way too stressed to think that you may have a sugar drop. They're way more likely to think that you're just hysteric. Um, and that is already healthcare management. And why do healthcare people work so hard and so many hours in their profession? How's that to do with the labor market? How's that to do with money laundering? Is another issue. Um, but to cut the story short, whether we are the produce of our chart or not the produce of our chart, is a statement that needs to be um, seen through including the context. It's a statement that has a context, historical, cultural, political, and so on and so forth. You may have a very good reason to say, we are our charts. You may come from a completely different culture, completely different lineage, where the understanding that we are our charts, and yes, there are things we can do, but we are the produce of our charts, and that's something that might be beneficial to you. Okay? If I'm completely authentic about my basically non-volitional achievements in the Me Too era, okay, there's so many things, so many people who have encountered where the juncture between what I knew and what they knew brought to the fact that they suddenly got help from the welfare when they were threatened for their life from the spouses, where things suddenly went right. And I can't give you a prescription. The things that I told them worked also for me. I wasn't able to apply all of them, even if I wanted, but I had other things working for me. Okay? So it's not a general prescription. I'm not here to sell you anything because there isn't anything to sell. I was in a juncture where, yes, many lives were saved, absolutely. Um, to tell you exactly what saved them, it was different for different persons. It's not in my control. So our non-volitional achievement, if I'm completely honest, are not coming from choices that, yes, there was an element of choice. Yes, I took the road less taken. Yes, I did choose to a certain degree, but my choice was so much guided by my sense of embodiment, by the understanding that if I choose life, then I do things that are life risking, like speaking up about all these things that I'm speaking up about, as this is my telos. I get sick to the point that my life is at risk if I didn't do it. And when I'm doing it, yes, it is life risking for some, several, many of the things I did was life risking, rather, definitely. Okay, my psychologist did not threaten my life for no reason. It was something that he's scared about, and I'm not even beginning to assess the tip of the iceberg of what was he so afraid of. It was not just him being in jail for 2 years because he had sex with a patient. It's not that. Um, but this is where you understand that we are both the produce of our charts, and there's something to do about this. Okay, and this is where I call the point of interference. I mean, in a chaotic system, okay, the way that the device that regulates your heart is made, we go back to the 70s, there was chaos theory. And chaos theory was fascinating because it was random. But I want to take you back another 20 years to the 50s. And I want to talk about Richard Feynman. So what Richard Feynman was doing, he was explaining you how light works. And you can't explain how light works without touching on quantum elements, which he gladly said, if you understand something about quantum, then you don't understand quantum. But still, he explained to us the non-dual aspect of light. It works as a wave, it works as a particle. It was not news, but he understood um, the various diagrams for how light would express itself in different phases. Okay, so he basically made another specification of the working of light. As a person with a 12th house Leo, of course, channeling relevant things to do with light, and that would mean a 6th house Aquarius ruled by Saturn, and the sun in his ninth. So he had teachings about the invisible facets of light. And he understood, you said, I can't make the truth more, I cannot lie to you, and I cannot make the truth more simple to you. It is intricate. And there is an element of probability in the way that light works. And he integrated probability into the studies of what was exact science up until then. You say, what can you predict? Well, this is the probability of your particle going here. This is the probability of this wave behaving in that way. This is what I can say. It's probable. It's not 100% sure. And as we enter this point where we understand that we cannot expect 100% from science, that affects a patient-specific application. Okay? If you want to build a bridge, you're pretty much good with classical mechanics. Okay? Bridges were being built in the Middle Ages. Leonardo da Vinci made diagrams for bridge building, okay, when he designed cities. Okay? You're pretty much good with classic mechanics. If you want to build a spaceship that will survive going beyond the speed of light, then there are other things you need to consider. And those things are probable. It's not exact science. Okay? Now we're going to take that back, take that back to the future. 20 years back to the future. The name of my thesis, Back to the Future, which I didn't write. I wrote the thesis proposal. Then I did applied stuff. And if we go back to the future 20 years, we're in chaos theory. Nobody wanted to put their name on chaos theory. Why? Okay. Because they were not working within Feynman. Feynman was within the Manhattan Project. He could do stuff. Yeah, before him was Einstein. Einstein could imagine. You name me a scientist that can wake up with an equation, and I personally knew one, and get approval and funding for his research based on his dream hypothesis to see if that works. Name me one scientist that managed to do that. Because we tried. That's another story. Okay? I can't tell exactly what it's about because it was his dream and his idea. I was assisting the project with my own insight, but we're no longer in contact, and he deserves to have creative rights over his ideas. So anyway, I'm not a plagiarist. Yeah, I'm not gonna be my offenders. So here's what I can say. So, okay. Einstein could imagine, and Einstein worked with the Pluto Cancer generation, which later will be the Pluto Leo generation. This would be the people who dropped the bombs. And that was Manhattan Project. Okay? So the Pluto Gemini, okay, the twin bombs generation, worked together with the Pluto Cancer generation to do something during the Pluto Leo. And the bombs were dropped between Pluto Cancer and Pluto Leo, okay, right where Mars was a couple of, like, a week, 2 weeks ago. And the Mars still is, but just later. And so, in Manhattan Project, you could come up with anything crazy and apply it because you were in a world war. If it works, it works. Then Feynman could talk about non-duality of light because he was in a project that made two bombs that genuinely worked, right? They did what they came here to do. We definitely have a proof that the concepts and the theories and the photoelectric blah 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 worked, applied. This is not a reality of the 60s and the 70s. Definitely not the 70s and the 80s. And so to get your name funded for a chaos research that deals with exploring randomness and patterns that are non-linear. And non-linear, I don't just mean one line, okay? When you talk about linearity, you talk about statistics, okay? If I can form, if I do a regression, okay, on the data, and I get a line, it doesn't matter what the curvature of the line is. The fact that it's not, the fact that it's curved, the fact that it has some curve, whether it's whatever curve, the fact that it's congruent, okay, it has consistency. The line itself has consistency, so not breaks within the line, okay, like Mandelbrot, if you know the fractals and Mandelbrot and so on and so forth. So that tells me that something is linear. So when I say non-linear, it means that sometimes the line This continues, then continues some other place, then discontinues, then continues when I do a statistic on it. Okay? This is what I mean nonlinear. Okay, so it won't get confused. Cyclical is not non-linear. The passage of the moon is not non-linear. It's very linear. It goes for 28 days around the cycle. It's a linear. Okay, it's a cyclic, but it's a linear. Chaotic is different. It means that something goes through, and then you have attractors. Okay, something goes through a certain cycle, then it reaches the threshold, and then it whoops goes to the other cycle. Can be the opposite, and then depending on how many strange attractors like this you have, and the relations between those strange attractors will define the threshold by means of gravity, which is actually energy. Again, this is my continuation on chaos theory. This is completely like, I don't say that somebody else didn't say my last sentence, but it can be that they didn't, okay? It's just to say that if somebody tries to patent something on the basis of that, touche, good luck, bye-bye, it's mine. You can't patent it. What you can do is do something in favor of humanity for it, but you can't patent it. You can't say, okay, you can't produce any medicine that helps people on the basis of that. Because I said it. And that's it. So, the thing is that if you were a researcher in chaos theory back then, because of the unpredictable nature of it, it's highly unlikely that you would find an instructor, let alone funding for your research. Nobody wanted their name on a woo-woo paper. Because if you were not dogmatic materialist, you were woo-woo. You see, Feynman was woo-woo. Einstein was woo-woo. But what is the application of chaos theory? The applications that to balance a chaotic system, there are points where you can interfere, where you can, with given a constant interval, realign the activity of the system. What are systems like this? It's the weather, it's the heartbeat, it's the nervous system. So when I learned about chaos system, I said, what they do for the heart, they can do for the mind, right? And then my friend said, and rightfully so, but you know the bugs of it. I'm like, but eventually they can do that. Unfortunately, that doesn't work like that. We tried to do that, and people came in and out of hospitals. What you hear it marketed as is this miracle that people that tried everything and nothing worked go through, and it suddenly helps them. While there probably are these cases, what I know as a person who is CPTSD veteran and knows people who are veterans both of war and of violence of any sorts, is that I know people who are trying this and they were going in and out of hospital. So unfortunately, you know, the maverick idea was not applying correctly. But when it comes to your heartbeat, then there is this thing, that the implant that you have in your heart that regulates your heart could not be made before chaos theory. But nobody could get their name funded for chaos theory research in the 70s and the 80s. Okay? Why people are afraid of their status. They're afraid of, you know, being seen as ostracized. They're afraid of this, they're afraid of that. And there are, of course, more political reasons for that, but I'm speaking on a very naive level, okay, on the Pluto that enters the door of Scorpio and just enters the door and like, oh, okay, I see this, I see that, I see that. Of course there is more depth. And of course it's more malignant in many cases. But on a very naive level, because in the 29th degree, you return to the first degree. Okay, when you get older, you return to your innocence, right? And you look at it from an innocent perspective. Eventually, people don't want to be ostracized. Eventually, people want to be seen and to be valued. Eventually, people want to be credited for their ideas. Eventually, when you fear not being able to do that, then you don't venture into things. Okay? When any of us Me Too veterans venture into what we've ventured, had there not been a certain deterministic mechanism for our body that says, well, you're either going to die very sick and not very old, or you're going to speak, we spoke. Okay? There was an equally potent power of threat that was internal, that is way more potent than any power that was put against us, and that is how we spoke. Okay, this is physics. And what we spoke about? The autonomy for our body. Okay, which is incredibly funny. Um, and this also brings into finding solutions. And now we are into Pluto Aquarius, okay, between the Pluto Capricorn to Pluto Aquarius, where we understand that there's a certain algorithm, that there's a certain structure that needs to be there. Okay. Yes, there are certain people who wouldn't murder their spouses and families in a financial crisis if they had safe housing, safe food, if they were not afraid that their children are going to end up sex trafficked because the family doesn't have a way to bring money on the table, and a way to put the children in good education, and a way to save the family. Okay, so you would hear of these cases where a man is fired from his job, living in a mansion with his wife and children and two doggies, comes up with the gun, shoot her, shoots the children, shoot the doggies, and shoots himself. And for him, he's doing the right thing. Okay, those cases happen, and this is structure. Okay? And another thing, where is the money that the companies that you invest in by compulsion, i.e. your 401k, are invested? I was at the offices of one of these companies. I didn't even know where I was because I had this idea, and I still have. Said, okay, I'm getting welfare. Let's put something the equivalent of $5 to an American as an investment, but I want to broadcast what this money does live. I say I'm going to put my money, okay, which is also the public money because I'm receiving welfare. So I'm going to do something with the public money that is transparent. Okay? I'm going to put $5, see what they do, and have it live broadcast so people can watch it live, and maybe have somebody narrating that. Okay? What does it do? If it's AI, if it's this, if it's that, if it's digital, okay, then if it grows, then spread it across and spread it across. So because I thought every homeless person that gets a donation of $1 can put this dollar to invest. Okay, $1. Okay? And that's how you're supposed to get social mobility. So let's expose this. So I was trying to pitch that. And see what it can do. Again, I'm the Pluto that stands at the doorway. Okay, you say you got social mobility, money makes money. Okay, here's $1. Can you get my dollar and make me more dollars? I'm willing to invest my dollar. I got this dollar. What can I do with my dollar? How can I make $2 and then $3? And then maybe $4, maybe $2 again, and then $3, maybe $4. And then we can learn, and maybe I can learn how to be smarter, and I make more dollars. And I can broadcast it, so I can show how every person that gets $1 can use this dollar. I can show it live to the people. What can this dollar do? Okay. But this company, I met a technical system worker. Okay. And this technical system worker, he was very kind to me. He said, listen, we can't invest your money because we have very, very large clients. We don't have a lot of clients, but our clients are very, very large companies that are public and sector and private sector. And I'm standing there, and he was very kind to me because the CEO was at a meeting, and he went right in to the CEO's door, and he got his attention, and he gave me coffee in a Princeton glass. It's a glass of University of Princeton. It wasn't Israel, but the glass was from Princeton, and it says "Small World" to the infinity. So I made me coffee in this cup. And then I drink the coffee, and I looked at the other cup, and it says "Sleep is for the weak." Okay, I'm a holistic health practitioner. The first question I'm taught to ask my patients and everybody that comes at my door is, "How is your sleep?" Immediately I took this and I took another glass of water. So I drank the water and I put the coffee in the water cup because I didn't want the energy of these words in my cup of coffee. But guess what? I didn't sleep the next day. And for very good reason. Because I waited there at the porch. The porch was the size of a flat in New York City. 2 flats in New York City. Okay? It was one piece of real estate. I could see the sea from there. And the name of the building in front of me, it's called Eckerstein, is a name of a real estate company. And in that building was sitting JP Morgan. Okay? So you get the message of what companies are invested in this company that I wasn't. I can't say the name. And I'm sitting there. After a while comes the CEO. Half of his body goes into the porch. His legs are still indoors. He said, what do you want? I told him my pitch. Okay, we got in I said, well, people look for transparency. And I was looking for companies who are willing to make a video, a live video of what they're doing. So people can be interested in get financial responsibility. Okay, everybody talks about you taking financial responsibility, making choices in life, right? Right choices. How can we help you? So he was standing there, half his body outside, his legs still inside, and saying, we don't make any cooperations. We don't expose what we do. And of course, I was guided to leave, which I couldn't resist. I didn't have no army. I didn't have no guns. It's Israel. I'm like, if you're not in the army, you don't have guns. And I could not, put the phone in his face. I could not do any of that. I did not have backup for any of that. I had to leave. But the fact that I was there, right? It was the CEO. And this kindness of this person that was working at the technical. And when I said I want to pitch something, he immediately went to his boss, to the CEO of the company while he was in a meeting and ushering me to make me some coffee and sit there. This is something that I don't forget. These are people that I don't forget. Okay, these are people that are going to make your company rich. These are the type of employees that are going to make your company rich. But you got to be the right CEO. But the thing is that CEO was working in a company who's holding the money of the companies that you're investing in by compulsion. You're not choosing to invest this money. Your 401k is obligatory. Whether you're an employee or self-employed. In Israel, if you're self-employed, you're obligated to save money. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay? It's not a bad habit to set some money aside to pay yourself first. But it's not you're paying first. And you think, oh, I'm paying for this company and for that company, and they invest the money, and they invest what you care. Would they invest the money? But look at the company that get the companies that your money's invested in. They don't do cooperation. They don't expose. Yeah? What about money laundering? Money laundering necessitates all transactions to be transparent. And if it's public money, it has to be transparent to the public. This is public money. Okay? So you see that there's something structural as well as something that's to do with agency. And when we get to Aquarius, we get the agency of the masses. And so in Pluto Capricorn, we go up to and I was at the high building, okay? We go up to the top floor, we go up to the penthouse, we go up to who is at the top, and we point the finger at them, okay? But with Pluto Aquarius, j'accuse, with the I accuse, the finger is pointed at we, the people. What does each and every one of us does? Okay, it's the polar opposite of Leo. It's what you as a person can do. It's what do we, the people, do as society. And then you ask, are we our charts or are we the face of the time that we live in? Okay? The sentence, the man is but the image of the views of his motherland, was basically created, if I'm not mistaken, unless it's something biblical that was that, but modernly it was spoken by people with Pluto in Cancer. Yes, so Cancer, the motherland. So the power of the motherland to shape the person. Okay? So the power of the person to shape the person. Okay? Virgo, the power of hard work to shape the person. Libra, the power of relations as shaping our person. You think about open dialogue, it's very much a Pluto Libra thing. How healing happens in a context, how you need a witness in order And witnessing already brings us into Scorpio, because Scorpio is about secrecy and healing is shedding light. Okay? So the power of turning the light on, because you can't turn the darkness off, is shaping you as a person. Then we get the Sagittarius, okay, the power of your mind, your consciousness, okay, the Abraham Hickses, okay, the positive thinking to shape you as a person and shape your life. Pluto Capricorn is the structure, the hierarchical structure. Okay? Pluto Aquarius is the power of the zeitgeist, or the spirit of the times, how the spirit of the times shape us as people. And so are we our charts? Yes, we are the spirit of the times. Not surprisingly, the person who's saying we are our charts was Cameron, who's a medical astrologer, and his ascendant is ruling Aquarius. Gives Aquarius ascendant ruled by Saturn, but the Saturn of Aquarius. Okay? We are but the spirit of the times. What is the spirit of the times? If we were born in a certain chart, then the spirit of the times of the chart is captured in the chart. This is the person. Okay? Then what can you do about it? Can you do magic? Can you do remediation? Can you do embodiment, as is practiced by Cameron, and so on and so forth. And I had an interview with Cameron that you can check on my Spirit of Matter episode. You have to scroll back, way back to 2021, I believe, or 2022 already. No, 2021. You have to scroll back to 2021. Then you have my first Spirit of Matter interviews. So what's on the menu? I am planning for an Aries episode. Need to fix some kind of technology stuff and have a person who's very embodied in their knowledge of the asteroid Aries, which I see as a planet. And I consider that we should all at least consider taking note of asteroids as planets. Okay? I have delving deeper into fixed stars, which I need to do myself. Maybe, maybe not, we'll see. And yeah, these are the things on the menu. So you can stay tuned, you can subscribe if you like this type of content. I hope that was useful. And I hope this contribution of more holistic view to are we our charts, are we not our charts, and how that manifests in a historical context, both astrologically, but also in a very real mundane way. If you didn't know anything about astrology, what could you say about the variance in answer between being a Me Too veteran, being a Manhattan Project veteran, and being a World War II veteran, or being an atomic veteran? Okay? And how would these people answer these questions? Even if you didn't know about anything about astrology and or the spirit of the times. So that was my input, and I'm very excited and eager to know about more historical context, more stories, and more worldviews that shape different positions. And understand, my top teaching when I talk about holistic health practitioning, my top teaching is that your beliefs and the way you apply them need to support your well-being. Okay? If your belief is not right for your well-being, and I know it's tricky to understand what is and what isn't, but eventually the altering of your beliefs according what is correct for your well-being right now, because beliefs are temporal, that is the essence of the conscious level of healing. One good concrete example is karma. Okay, I told about the case where I was 9 years old, probably visiting my grandmama at the hospital, and I like to walk around because I was a child. I was not hyperactive. I was just being a child, and I needed to walk. And then this doctor grabs me, hugs me supposedly, and takes me to the side. And before I knew it, fortunately, he saved my life. The child of my mama's cousin was asking was doctor, like, hey, what are you doing? And the doctor, still holding me, replied, What are you interrupting? Interrupting what? You holding a 9 years old child, take her indoors to what? To do what? Okay? And I was 9 years old listening to this. And I always get stuck when I tell it because I'm like, what was I speaking about? Like, of course, you can't just say the story and move on with your life. Um, what was I saying? It's the second time it happens to me. Well, we were talking about, fate and fortune, the Pluto generation, spirit of the times. How do you view the question about choice? Concrete example. So the concrete example was about karma. And I said, do I want this doctor, who probably did hurt other children and torture them, do I want him to reincarnate as a child and go through torture? No. Do I think that that's anyway useful? No. On a soul? No, 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 no. I have a completely different view of karma, which is very reasonable as we are in the spirit of the times of Pluto going through two Saturn ruled signs. What is Pluto? It's decomposing something. It's composting something. And if you read the Bible, it doesn't matter. You could be the most atheist person in the world. Okay, I'm possibilitist. The Bible can be seen as the story. But the story is also historical. There were several moral, karma perceptions in the Bible. One said the fathers ate raw fruits and the teeth of the children rot. Okay? There was a karma where our parents' actions affect our actions, which to some degree you can't ignore. And another said, if the fathers ate raw fruit, the teeth of the children are not affected. So it was dissolution, it's letting go of the karma. We are now at these times. Where people can do things. There are many things that are happening. One of the streams, one of the paths that are happening right now at these times is that certain karmas are being dissolved, composted. What your parents did, your grandparents did, this, what do you do today? Because we are opening up with Pluto ingressing into Aquarius, a 248-year cycle. Okay? The previous one was the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the foundation of the United States of America. And then at the halfway, the Pluto Leo, we had the twin bombs, which United States was supposedly saving the world, but of course it was doing things that are not too different from what its opponent Germany was doing. Concentration camps, working camps, medical experiments, racism, die ganze Geschäft. Okay, it was not as well documented as Hitler, that's all. Okay. And when do I say that? When Pluto is ingressing, first of all, during the Pluto return of the United States, because Pluto is going to hit another one, he's going to strike another. He's already going back to Capricorn, is going to strike another, and then it's going to go back and re-ingress and finally ingress into Aquarius for good. What the S.J. Anderson calls the for good. Okay, and that is the impactful point. And so as we are going through, looking at these 248 years, we can understand the equilibriums. And we understand that we are now at the times where what our ancestors did is not that important. What is important is that we do the best we can to do different and set up this new cycle of karma of 248 years. And this is one of the spirit of the times where I predict that in the Bible, when we transitioned from the fathers ate rotten fruit and the teeth of the fathers ate fruit that was not ready, and the teeth of the children were rotting, then changing into the spirit of the times where what you did matter. It didn't matter what your parents did. What you do matters. Okay? This is the time that we are today. So whatever we can to do good, right? Whatever is the good. And what we can learn from a previous cycle is that we still had slavery after the American Revolution. Okay? We still had racism. We still have it today. it took two world wars, so two generations of men to die to get to a situation where women vote politically. And I'm saying that not as an accusation of men or patriarchy. Okay? If you were living a good life with your husband, you could poison your husband if he was being abusive. Okay, so that was also a possibility for some people, probably the privileged. You could poison your husband if he was abusive to you, if you're a privileged woman, but and probably could get away with that. But for other women, like you live this way, you tended to your things, your husband tended to their things. Okay? But when they died, when they were at war, you gotta open a business, you gotta do your accountancy, and then you pay taxes. So you say, okay, I pay taxes, but what are my rights? It cannot be that I cannot vote onto where my taxes go. Okay? And that's how women eventually got the right to vote. Okay? They start fighting for it because now they were exposed to what their taxes are doing. So why am I exposing what your taxes are doing? Because I tried to run a business. I said, okay, I got welfare. Okay, then I had a first degree, then I had an almost second degree, then I had education. Okay, now I'm a holistic health practitioner. I can do astrology. I can do essential oil blends. Surely there's a way for me to make money, and I must make sure that this is my thing, that I don't overwork myself so that I don't get sick again and have to rely on welfare again. But other than that, I have to learn internally how to make a life while making a living. And then I was exposed to what my taxes are doing, what they're not doing, because I didn't think bad of taxes. Not before I got welfare, and after I got welfare, then of course not, because I said, well, I got a degree. But then I was looking and seeing, if you say no to violence, you have no housing. What you're offered is shelter that are like concentration, and they kill the person if you get in. And I've been in, I had to escape, to run away from a shelter. And it was crazy. And all these things, or you come even with a Dutch, I have Dutch nationality, I came with Dutch nationality. Not only did they not ask for my fingerprint, thanks to Peter de Vries, okay? Funny because I didn't know who he is, and he kept coming with his fingerprint. I didn't know the show, so I didn't understand, because he had this misdaadgeslager show. It was solving crimes that nobody was tending to, and the trend of the show was the fingerprint. So it's been very helpful when I was in Netherlands. I was just looking. I learned about him, and then I tried to learn about him, to listen to the Dutch language, to relearn the Dutch language in which I can emotionally relate to, and then I tried to channel him, and he was very helpful, so eagerly helpful, and yeah, and so the story behind me tending to what your tax money is doing is simply by looking at, okay, why doesn't my business take off, other than the growth that I'm doing as an individual, which I'm still doing, we're all doing. There are also things where my tax money is doing once I'm healthy, that the world does not consent to anymore, and therefore I can't up jump my business unless I attend to these things. Because as a person whose income is welfare and has made a degree thanks to having a welfare system, as terrible and as harsh, and I literally consented to it's not even medical experiments, but what I now understand is medical oppression. I didn't think that was the case. I thought that this was some treatment method that for me is not good, and I tried and this and that, but it didn't work, and it nearly killed me. So I said, okay, I must employ some other ways. So to put it all together, it took 2 generations of men dying for women to get voting, simply because that was the spirit of the time, not because men are more evil or better than women. Okay? Simply because that's how it was. Okay? Just the same as, if you're now starting a business and you're one of the people who are with the spirit of the times, and you see, you won't up jump your business because things are going to come up, and all your traumas from labor market is going to come up, and you have to tend to that, and then you see the world brings you to certain situations. You're being exposed to certain data, and you're being exposed to what you can do about it, because certain things need to change so we can make a life while making a living. Then that's the essence of that. So if you go back to the Pluto and Aquarius, the previous generation, capitalism is not bad. Capitalism is not corporatism. Yes, capitalism. The pillars of capitalism is decentralization. Okay. What you see as corporate advocated for consumerism, this is not capitalism. Okay. That being said, when capitalism is not inclusive, and you have to have, there's always charity. Charity is in religion, charity is in, I think it was, I don't remember his name, this philosopher. It was not John Rawls. John Rawls is never mind. So, when you have a system where you do have, and charity can call taxation charity. Investment is a donation, donation is an investment. Because you don't give a donation for people to stay in the situation that they are. You give them as an investment for them to be able to grow, wherever they are. Even if it's crossing over in a way that is more at ease. So, so there definitely has to be a certain a system that allows for charity that is in some way in some way making sure that it will reach the people who are currently not able to make a life while making a living. Okay? That has to be that's the adjustment that has to be. Okay? So capitalism can be inclusive. Yeah? But there's also decentralization, because if you're giving to funds and not directly to people, then somebody's gonna eat that. And it's not gonna be the person that's hungry. Yes, they're going to feed a different kind of hunger that they're not tending to. And it also needs to be tended to with compassion, but not without forgetting the people who really need the money or the resources. So, how to do that is a question that we stand in again today. And it can't be only the people who own lands, as was previously in both the French Revolution and the American Revolution. It's people that owned land or became entitled to say, I own land, thanks to this revolution. It cannot be only these people. If you're enslaving people, you're not free. And this is in the most utilitarian way. If you need to exert power, if you're enslaving people, you need to exert power. It doesn't matter what type of power you're exerting power. It's psychological, spiritual, physical, financial, whatnot, sexual, whatnot. If you need to employ power, you're not free. Power stands in stillness. What's the greatest martial artist saying? Okay, be like the water. Okay, but he also means still water. It's Scorpio, right? But it's still water. It's stillness. It's the power of stillness and inner peace. That's power. If you need to employ power over another person, you're not free. And this is something we must keep in mind. We must keep in mind. Because yes, you do, the polarity of Scorpio is Taurus. Taurus is land. If our people, all of our people, all of the species, races, religions, genders, worldviews, whatnot, okay, as long as they are coinciding with granting freedom to their surroundings and to themselves, if those are not free, if those don't have land, okay, they cannot rebel. Then we cannot reach the point where we go to Pluto Leo again, which is probably 150 years from now. We cannot reach the point where a bud of Hitler starts to grow and it is composted before it even shed leaves. That's the potential that we have. We are heading to the 300 years, ushering us to the golden ages. Okay? We're heading to the golden ages. We absolutely, the telos is that we'll be doing that this time. And that's an optimistic note to end on. So thank you so much for spending the sunrise with me and honoring the sun. So this is a time where I can check what it's probably Sol. Okay, it's probably the day of the sun and the no, it's not the day of the sun because it's a Jupiter day. No, it's a Mars day. Wait, all of my private stuff are out as usual. Ruler of the 12th in the 10th, which is Uranus, and in the 9th is Saturn. Can I get a today's current planet? Thank you. So we got the midheaven applying to Venus. Venus in 25 degrees of Cancer, midheaven 21 degrees. The ruler is in Libra, the ascendant ruler in Libra, applying to the moon. So we have this nice reception between Venus and the moon right now. No, it's not. It's an election that I made. Oh God, this election, I'm going to do something good at this election. I didn't even plan it. No, sorry. So ascendant on my Juno, 26 degrees Gemini with Mercury still in the 12th. And this is a Mars day, sun hour, so honoring the sun. Mars is sitting pretty in the sign of the sun. And the sun is in the sign of the ascendant. So 5 degrees Leo Mars, 8 degrees Gemini Sun, 13 degrees Taurus Mercury is the ruler of the sun. And midheaven just crossed Saturn in the 10th house. Saturn ruling the 9th house and the 8th house here with Pluto in between. Venus in Cancer. Okay, so only the ascendant changed from the beginning of the episode. The moon in 6 degrees. I have a lot with the sixes this year. It's a 9th year numerologically, but a lot with the sixes. I have something to do with my personal number or whatnot is being 6. So a very 6 year, whatever this means. The moon is applying to trine the sun and separating from a trine to Pluto and separating from a sextile to Mars. And this is the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and you can subscribe if you want more of the same. And I'll see you in my next episode. Bye bye.